So,
Slide. Yeah.
how do I say
So
your name?
Iryna.
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 Okay, just
Yes.
wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So hello everyone. Today we have I have a fellow therapist and a counselor, Casey Lee. He's located in Columbia, South Carolina, right? And we're gonna talk about fear of intimacy. It's a kind of huge topic, very deep topic, right? It's kind of underlines a lot of problems that our clients come to us with. And we're just gonna discuss it and give you some suggestions on what we could do about it. Other than, of course, therapy is always great for that. So Casey, how often do you basically see you work with? So Casey, you work with primarily relationships and couples. That's kind of my focus as well. I work with mostly relationship issues and intimacy. Actually, that's like my thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and I see it a lot. It's very I just wonder, like in your experience, how often do you see fear of intimacy in underlining of an issue that couple or an individual presents?
Yeah. I think that actually comes up a lot. And that fear of, you know, uh, so it's kind of tricky how to maybe like define that, the fear of
Mm-hmm.
intimacy,
Yeah.
because I think in some ways it can show up in different ways, like
Mm-hmm.
because in one way it can show up is that we maybe you see some for some people who don't who are scared to be intimate, they might not really open up or
Mm-hmm. They
maybe,
might know, and they might even know they have it, right?
yeah.
Because they just have this tendency not to get really intimate, right? And but they wouldn't realize that. They would just sometimes that's how they are all life, right? And then tend to have this distant relationships, but for them it's okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
it could be the case, right? We don't even
Yeah,
realize that sometimes.
yeah, and I think to be intimate involves us to be known, involves
Mm,
us to be truly known of how we feel, what we need, what we long for, what
mm-hmm.
we want. And sometimes we learn that that's kind of dangerous, or that can be dangerous or scary through our experience
Yeah.
of being open,
Mm-hmm.
and being vulnerable. So I think intimacy involves vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot feel intimate without being vulnerable, and
Yes.
vulnerable meaning being really true and raw and authentic and being open,
Yeah.
right, with what we're feeling or what we're wanting and needing.
Yeah.
So it's more of almost a fear of vulnerability, I think. Fear
Right.
of being open, being known,
Yeah.
expressing ourselves truly.
Right. I so agree with you that that's exactly what the fear is, because of the experiences, and we can just cannot talk about this topic about bringing in painful experiences from childhood, right? Because that's the baby is born and the baby is completely vulnerable and open and to the environment. And usually we all have painful experiences that cause us to close down, to
Mm,
build up protection,
right.
to close down the vulnerability, to stop being who we are
Mm,
and develop what we call false self, right? um,
yeah.
and or traits that become people pleasing and accommodating and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And we do those things for a good reason, right? To protect
Definitely.
ourselves. It's survival, right? Like if we've never had success in being open and vulnerable, if we've when we've done it, like I guess it goes back to when we have tried to do it, how were we responded to, right?
Hmm.
If we didn't feel like that brought us comfort or connection, or it felt like we were being accepted or cared for,
Hmm. Yeah.
soothed and safe and secure, then it makes it much more scary to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
And
then
mhm.
we learn to not do that, to keep whatever we have in whatever relationship safe, right? Or not make it get any worse.
Right.
So,
And I love how you kind of normalize it, because it's true that we can get so like critical of the defenses and forget that they are actually very useful survival tools and they're very helpful. It's just that at some point they just kind of get outdated in terms of like the threat is not longer there. Like we
yeah,
can be, that's what we see in couples, right? There is this person and this person is ready to be intimate, and sometimes they're not, but we cannot go there because we have this defense and the wall to
right.
protect the vulnerable,
Yeah,
the sensitive, true us.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And what could be really devastating or tragic is when we have these ways to try to protect ourselves and even the relationship with our defenses. In a relationship, it can actually end up causing the other person to react in a way that then makes it feel more unsafe for us to be vulnerable. And when we get stuck
Mhm.
in a pattern or a cycle,
Yeah,
and we get
right.
further and further away. Yeah.
And usually when we meet, right? So two people meet, they kind of, the patterns kind of match, right? So maybe one is has this pattern of being having the walls up, and the other one is at some point it stops working, right? And that's when couples start having issues.
Mhm.
And maybe one person craves more intimacy and they're not satisfied, they're not loved, they don't have this like juicy connection where they, because it feels like, to me, the intimacy feels so amazing,
Mhm. Yeah.
once you get there. It
Right.
takes a lot to get there, but once
Mhm.
you're in that space, it's like you've seen,
Right.
your heart is open, it's
Mhm.
like this energy is flowing, just feels
Mhm.
so good and yummy and worth it, right? But
Mhm.
it's so hard to get there.
Yeah. Right. I was just thinking, yeah, to be fully known and then to be loved and accepted is such a powerful experience. I think it's
Yeah,
what we all long for, right? Is to be known and to be loved,
to be seen
to be
and
seen.
accepted, to be seen for who you truly are, and be accepted. That's like the best.
Yes.
I feel so healing.
Yes. Yeah.
And to have it with your partner, that's
Mm,
like,
yeah.
that's amazing. I wish for everyone to have that experience, because it's
Mm,
so truly healing.
yes. Yes. Yeah. It is really, really powerful. And I think we kind of all long for that in some ways. And it just sometimes for some of us we just don't know how to get there. And even
Yeah.
when something is so powerful and something we long for, there's also another part at play where it's scary, right? And it's kind of like
Mhm.
fear and intimacy are actually two sides of the same coin, right? And
Mhm.
I think they come together, right? Like it can't, when we're being intimate, we're being open and we're risking. And it can also
Oh
be
yeah.
scary at the same time.
Yeah, and we do get hurt. Like I'm sure some of us took that risk. So it's also knowing who can you do it with, right? Like having some safety in place, because like I'm sure if I'm completely open and vulnerable, like say on Facebook, that might not be a safe environment to do that.
Right.
So it's also like when we work with like clients, we also help them to develop that sense, like where can I, what are the signs of like safety to go there with.
Right. Right.
And so let's talk a little bit maybe of how can you, or how you help people get there, right? So this is like intimacy, that's like the goal, the place to come. And then couple comes to you, to me, or to a therapist, to coach, I don't know, who, to help her, and they just can't get there, right? They stuck in this patterns. So how would you guide them towards this place? Like what would the path look like?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're talking about a couple coming in, like,
Yeah, let's talk maybe about couple, because it does look different when two people are kind of in it together, right?
yeah.
and they both like say, okay, let's do it, versus like one individual coming and we can maybe talk about couple first.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would want to know like how they get stuck, right? Like what blocks them from actually
Right.
having these conversations. And I think inevitably um, uh, something happens between each other that makes it not feel so safe, right? To open up. So whether it's somebody feeling like, hey, if I open up and really talk about how I feel, I'm afraid I won't be heard or seen or cared for, like, you know, and responded to. So that might really kind of cause one person to not want to really talk about how they feel, right? In a more vulnerable, tender way. Or if the other person one person might feel like, if I do, I might be, I don't know, like criticized, or I might be not be accepted, right? Like judged, maybe, right? So I think there are some fears that come up, and usually when we really get down to it, it's either I'm scared I'd be abandoned, right, and left alone if I really put myself out there, or I'm scared I'd be rejected, right, and and I can't be who I am, right? It kind of all comes down to those things.
Yeah. So we kind of walk that path with a couple to get there, right? To get to the fear and to hold the fear and to be in touch with the fear and not let it stop you take that first step. And also the safety needs to be created, because like you said, I mean, some of those fears are real, right? Sometimes we do reject our partners when they're open and vulnerable, and we don't realize that.
Right, yeah. And to be able to talk about it and see the impact we're having on each other. Sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes we have our own fears and we're reacting, right? Which then ends up the way we react triggers the other person, right? Like, yeah. And so it's like a pattern that can really develop. And I think it's helpful to slow down to see what that pattern is, right? How what I do impacts the other person and vice versa.
Yeah, that's so helpful. How what I do impacts the other person. That's what we kind of, you know, it's like in a session, so you kind of zoom into that, because in life you might not even realize that that person not showing the impact, right? Just because showing the impact is also feeling vulnerable, like showing that this have hurt you. It's also a lot of times we're so used to like devaluing our emotions, right? Like we something happened and we don't feel good about it, but say it's okay. Like, oh, it's okay, it's nothing. I'm like, it's fine, you know, put up the mask and so.
And I think that's also because that's also being vulnerable, like you just said, you know, like to admit that I'm hurt is kind of putting myself out there too. So it makes sense then we have these parts that say, hey, like, it's okay, it's not too bad, except it isn't the case. And usually we react in ways that then impact the other person back, and we get stuck and we get further and further away from what's happening inside, right?
And say if you do you work mostly with couples or individuals, or kind of both?
I work mostly with couples, like the majority of my work.
Yeah. So you do you do the dance, this path with a couple, which is different when there's an individual that's working on one side. So we can talk more about the couple's perspective. It's definitely helpful when both people are committed, right?
Yeah.
And what would you say? Just kind of curious, exploring to, you know, sometimes with a couple, I feel like there's this gridlock or this like, you know, the stuckness. That's why they come, really, but they already so not feeling safe with each other, because they had years of like criticism it's kind of hard to get through that. So I'm just curious what you would recommend, right?
Right. We
When the
talked
couple
about,
is, and we know that couples come to counseling, to therapy, like years after the problem has started. So by
mhm,
the time they get to us, it's already like so much stuff
mhm.
there.
Yeah.
So like, and they get discouraged too. So
Mhm,
maybe
mhm,
we can talk about how to stay hopeful while you work through that, and
mhm.
what you've seen, what helps to work through that.
Yeah, yeah. I think we just talk about that, right? Yeah. So
Hmm.
I can see why this is very hopeless for you guys, right? Every
Hmm.
time you try to connect or it gets nowhere and you get stuck, um,
Hmm.
it makes sense it would feel hopeless.
Hmm.
And yet you're still here wanting to work on your relationship.
Hmm.
Says a lot about, I think, how much you care about each other, right? Deep within,
Yeah.
how much you want to get out of this stuckness together.
Hmm.
And I think it's really helping create space to be honest and to be open about
Hmm.
what's happening. Yeah, I say it doesn't hurt, I say it doesn't matter, but it actually does hurt or it does bother me. But I worry about talking about that out loud, how you're gonna respond.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't feel safe doing that. Like I think having honest conversations about it, and talking about what is really important because it gives our partner a clearer message of what's happening inside. And
Yeah.
it's also good to be able to express, right, what I'm actually experiencing and feeling. Yeah.
It's kind of starting with acknowledging the truth, right? This is where we at, and because avoidance doesn't help, right? That the avoiding the issue and pretending like it's okay and we're just tired, so the connection's not happening. And it's like, well,
Right.
so the first step is acknowledging the
Mhm,
issue, that does no,
mhm,
it's actually there are things that are
right.
working.
Mm, yeah.
um
And it's even acknowledging the avoidance, right? I know I
yeah.
do avoid because I worry if I don't, what's going to happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's what I do. I'm even nervous about talking about this right now, right? Like coming into session, like I don't even know if I feel nervous about this whole process, right? Like
Yeah.
I think just
Yeah.
being honest about the avoidance and what that's about, I think is a huge step. Actually, it takes a lot of courage.
Right, because there's a reason for avoidance, right? It's like you come back to acknowledging those defenses, that they have a reason. Because you know what if we don't avoid and we go into counseling, and the whole thing's gonna fall apart, right? Because that's also the case.
Right.
Could be the case of
Mhm,
the
mhm.
risk. So actually, that's under avoidance. There could be fear of abandonment or rejection, right? That's
Right. Right. And what you said was so lovely that sometimes it's like I want to avoid because I want to protect things, I want to make sure it doesn't get worse.
right,
I
right.
worry if we haven't had success in this, and I've never had success, it's gonna get worse. This is my best attempt at making things not as bad.
Yeah.
It impacts the other person, but I think there's good intentions there even, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. So
Definitely, definitely. And it works some time, and I guess I'm definitely on the more of my approach is like, that's I don't like to avoid things. I'm sure I was avoiding for a while, but for me, I'm like, I would rather know the truth than cover it up. But I can see how scary it is to to go there.
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have so the couple comes, and there's, like we said, like years of stuff, and there's acknowledged where they at, and it's not working, right?
Mhm,
And they want to change, they're committed to change, and they start investigating um the patterns. Is there anything they can do? I'm just trying to think, like, is there anything they can do on their own to um to deepen intimacy,
mhm,
if
mhm.
they feel like they can, right? If they
Yeah.
can't and they're getting stuck, of course it's
Mhm.
best to seek out help. But maybe they still feel like, oh, we maybe want to try something first,
Right,
see if we
right.
can do that on our own.
Yeah, yeah. I think, usually if they can, they would have.
That's
You know,
true.
but when it, but I think it is, if even to notice, right, the pattern, to notice, hey, I'm finding myself pulling back, not wanting to say
Mm-hmm.
anything, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm starting to worry here, right? My anxiety's coming up, danger, right? Uh-oh, we're
Right.
gonna get into this again. It's not gonna end well. Like if they can catch themselves and say that out loud, that's already very different. That's already being very true and honest, and connect, a point of connection.
Right.
Or if the partner says, hey, I'm finding myself getting really angry and very like frustrated, and trying to get more my energy is getting higher, my I'm getting more passionate, uh more intense here. If they can catch themselves and say, hey, like I know I'm coming in strong here, it's because I'm feeling like disconnected, right? Or I'm feeling like I'm not going to be heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling like I'm hitting a wall here, and I want to break the wall down almost by force,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to get to you, right? You matter to me here. You're
Mm-hmm.
important to me, and it feels so alone on the other side, right? And I just want to get to you, and I'm about to get really loud. I think that's already different, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I agree with you that like awareness is a great first step, like becoming more aware of what's happening with you in a relationship, right? Just noticing for yourself first.
mhm, right.
Like what am I feeling? Oh, I have this feeling. I don't want to go home,
Uh-huh.
right? Or I'm avoiding something. I want to watch a TV show and avoid my partner, right? Or like and just noticing, like you said, right? That's the great first step that you can do on your own.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be really hard because in those moments, our brain fires and like our limbic system kicks in, and we're just in fight or
Mm-hmm.
flight mode. And when we're in fight or
Sure.
flight, when we see a bear coming towards us, or when we're seeing danger, like we don't think straight usually.
Yeah.
Our
Emotions are high,
prefrontal cortex,
intelligence are low, right?
right? Yeah, our prefrontal cortex checks out, the logical side of us checks out, and we're reacting to survive.
Yeah.
So it can be really hard to um, to really be aware in those moments.
Yeah.
Not easy, and so I
No.
want to acknowledge that, like, lest some people feel bad that they miss it, in those moments, because I think it makes sense that sometimes we
Yeah.
can't catch out those moments, yeah. But I think it's also how we repair afterwards. It's
Right.
the we repair afterwards that really um, also makes a difference.
Right. In that sense, you can notice it when you notice it, right?
Mhm.
Past, I don't know, a couple hours later, whatever, and then notice that, like, oh, that happened. And if you can, of course, like sometimes sometimes awareness is not available to us, and that's okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
But for people who want to get more conscious in their relationships, more aware, right, in the relationship, maybe they want to start doing something today, right now. That's good. That could be a good first step to have an intention. Of course, realize that that might not be available to you, and that's okay too.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a great like reflecting, noticing. That's what we do in therapy a lot too, right? Helping clients
Right.
to see
Mhm.
what's happening in the room, and that's alone is usually creates a lot of value for the
Yeah.
couple.
Yeah. And I think in some ways we create the safety so that then they can be aware and that they can get in touch with what's happening inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the very least, maybe even if we can be aware in that moment, okay, maybe something feels, my alarm's going off, right? Inside, something feels danger, danger, right? And even
Mm-hmm.
noticing what you're feeling in your body, right? Like sensationally, I think could be a good first step. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Noticing your body is usually true, right? Like meaning that the mind can tells us stories, but the body doesn't lie. In the
right,
sense
yeah.
that if it's if you're feeling worked up, then something's happening with sending. I was, do you, I know you work with EFT, which is attachment, kind of deeper model. Do you ever give couples with like communication? What do you think about this communication skills thing? Because it's pretty popular out there. And sometimes people feel like they need to learn, and some communication tips are really helpful.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
What do you what's your sense about that? And what's your...
Yeah. So I think communication, I think when we get into a relationship, our communication skills are the same when we got into the relationship, when everything was beautiful and felt connecting and felt so nice, to the point where we get stuck. I don't think we forget these skills. I don't think they go away. So I think at that moment, it's not really even about the skill. It's about safety and security. And when we don't feel that, those skills kind of go out the window in those moments. They don't really work. They only work when you're feeling secure and safe. And so most of those people don't even really come to therapy anyways, right? As a couple. It would work. I mean, they can help enhance when you already have that security and safety. But when you're not feeling secure and safe in your relationship, at those moments, everything flies out the window, right? Whatever skill you have. I mean, I know the skills, right? So to speak, I know the thing. But when I get into it with my wife, I forget it sometimes, right? In the middle of that, I forget.
Well, when I'm triggered, right, and the emotions, they again, the limbic, the more primal stuff, the attachment, the security, the safety, it overtakes the skills and the prefrontal cortex and that side. So it's so that's why I feel like it's great, but it's, again, the deeper issue is the safety, the security, the attachment.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, sometimes if I teach people skills and they don't do it, they feel more shame, like there's something wrong with them, like there's something bad. But it's not. It's just you're both trying to survive at that moment, and because you love each other and you matter, and something's threatening you guys, that you react, right? Yeah.
So I resonate with that. It's skills are good, but the foundation needs to be first. Once you have a foundation, then you can apply the skills.
Right. Yeah. And I think once you feel secure and safe, then you can be vulnerable, right? Like you can be more open, you can be more honest, you can be more yourself. And then isn't that what connection is and communication is about? It's just being able to be open and vulnerable and be yourself and share yourself, right? Like, so
it definitely
it all
flows easier, right?
In some ways. Yeah. Right. It makes it a little bit easier, right? Yeah. So
yeah. Well, an EFT, the work that you do, you said approaches work is deep work, right? It's getting to the basic foundational attachment patterns. Do you ever get people, couples that don't want to go there, that say like, oh no, let's not like get there, like to the
right. Yeah. And directly,
just give me some skills.
Right.
Just tell me what to do, give me the answer, and
yeah, for sure. So that message can be told to me directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
And I think we go with that, right? Because there's a reason why I feel this anxiousness, that I need some skills, maybe because I'm desperate and I want to change this stuckness and I want something to be different. So we acknowledge and validate that. And we talk about what happens then when you get anxious, right? And when you really want to get unstuck, how do you talk about that with your partner? And
you want solution now because it's too painful to,
right.
It's too impatient to solve this.
Right. And it makes sense because you're drowning here and you want some air, right? Like you want to, you're so thirsty and you're not getting the water. You want it now. Of course, you've been in the desert for so long and you want the water. It makes sense. You want something quick, right? Like this is important. Your partner is important, and you want to really connect and really feel close, right? And feel like you guys can get unstuck from this. I get that, right? And then we talk about then when you're feeling this loneliness and when you're feeling this desperation, right, or anxiety maybe about wanting that, how do you talk about it, right? How do you share that with your partner? How do you let your partner into how important they are to you, right? How much
Mm-hmm.
it means for you, right? And then you can see the pattern in full, right? Because usually it's like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
really say that. I might make a comment here or there, or I might, say you better do this or we need to do that, right? Like,
Mm.
so
I love that. You just made it. That's what the EFT does, right? You just made it deeper, right?
Mhm,
Into like you validated and you acknowledged and to get a little deeper
yeah, right, yeah.
into the
Getting a little
pattern.
bit deeper, yeah, right, towards some more of the primary feelings, right? The deeper feelings
Mm-hmm.
we have. Because I think sometimes because of the pattern we get stuck in, those feelings never get expressed or seen by our partner. And therefore,
Mm-hmm.
the emotional signals get jammed up and they get mixed up and they get distorted, right? And they don't get clearly sent both
Mm-hmm.
ways. And so then we miss. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's getting more to those deeper, more primary feelings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it
It's
involves,
just so hard to get to.
yeah, yeah. It really involves safety, right? And knowing that
Safety.
if
Yeah.
I get there, am I going to be left alone or rejected, right? If so, then, I better not go there because those things are really tender and precious inside those feelings. And we need to
Yeah.
know that it's handled with care. Um, yeah.
Yeah. That's so. And usually we don't have that safety within ourselves first, right? So because if we didn't have it like in childhood, we didn't internalize it, so we don't have it inside. So we do
Mhm.
need this supportive space to get there because it just doesn't feel
Mm,
safe, even with
yeah.
ourselves.
Right, right. And what's the beautiful thing is like, we can have these bad experiences, or misses or experiences of not feeling safe previously in other relationships or growing up. But with our partner, those things we can actually have like corrective emotional experiences where it could be different, where we can experience something different and our brain can get rewired in a way
Mm.
where we can start feeling more safe, right? Or
Yeah, gotta
yeah.
love neuroplasticity, right?
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing is it's like in relationships we get wounded, but it's also in relationships that healing can come.
Yeah,
And that's the beautiful thing, I think, about
so beautiful. Yeah, I definitely. I mean, yeah, that's I've definitely had a lot of healing with my partner. Like the healing that I had in couples therapy were like so much intensified because of his presence and what was
yeah.
happening with the relationship.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's like a couples therapy. I feel like that's healing, it's for two people, and the container and the therapist is definitely intensifies in that way.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, because they say something like self-regulation versus being co-regulated with someone. Like
Mm-hmm.
co-regulation takes like 3 times less energy or glucose or something like that to co-regulate than to self-regulate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
we're all wired to kind of lean on each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The cradle to the grave, right? As John Bowlby would say, like attachment, the need to be able to turn to someone for comfort and support and reassurance is from the cradle to the grave, from the day
Yeah.
we're born to the day on our deathbed. Yeah.
That what makes us human, and maybe it's a good place to start wrapping up this beautiful conversation. Is that the wanting, the desire for intimacy is human. That's who we are. We want intimacy. We want to be connected, to feel that deep connection, and with that there comes the fear, and also very human,
Yes,
right? So we like
yes.
in this constant pull and pull, like we want it and we fear it, and
Mhm,
it takes so much courage to own that desire, to say I want it and I'm gonna do the work that's needed to get me there,
mhm,
right? So it takes so much courage to ask for help and come,
mhm.
and because asking for help
Yeah,
is also being vulnerable.
it
Like
is. Yeah.
yeah, people call us and they acknowledge that there's something that's not working, and that's being vulnerable. So that's already the hard step, right? To just reach out and acknowledge that I need help.
Yeah, it's so true. Like that, to be reaching out takes so much courage because you're being vulnerable, and to even say, hey, this is scary for me, is also vulnerable, right? Like it's also such a courageous step to even say, hey, it's scary, but it's scary because I think the other person matters to you.
Yeah.
It's because of love, that's why it's scary, right? Because this is important, right?
Yeah. So much love is in like asking for help, because it's saying, I love us, I love our relationship, and I want it to be so much more, right? I know there's so much more for us.
Yeah.
So let's go there.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of so I'm wishing everyone to have the courage to walk this journey, because I think it's worth it. I don't know, what do you think, Casey?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's so powerful. Yeah.
So powerful. It makes us feel so much more alive and present with ourselves and with our partner and with our kids and with everyone else on this planet. So
yeah,
I feel like it's healing for the planet as well.
Yes.
Doing this work.
Yes. Very well put. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll can end this beautiful point. We had about 30 minutes discussion. Casey, I'll put your website into so people can reach out, ask your questions. This also will be on YouTube, so people can find us that way.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to say appreciate what you do in trying to put more information out there and conversations out there for to help people, right, in their lives and their relationships, and so.
Yeah, I feel like there's just so much more available for people, so they should know about it. That helps to know about it. Education is powerful, and I had a really enjoyed this conversation and the flow, your energy, how you have a lot of acceptance and validation, ability to go deeper. It's a beautiful skill. So thank you so much, Casey.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and bye everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.